Gail? William? I think I have William. Great. And Heather Fraser. Heather? And do I have Will Manidis? Perfect. Great. Well, again, Rick, thanks so much. And we're going to get your video released next week. And we'll get you all the contact information of the different registrants, and we'll send information to you. I think there are a couple of inquiries asking for contact, so we'll forward it off to you later.
That sounds great, Marty. Thanks so much.
Great job. Thanks so much. Great. So we're going to talk a little bit about more opportunities in healthcare. And I'm very glad that we've got Bill Gale on, who's a longtime investment banker in the space. Bill, I cannot see your head, your face. You got to look at the camera.
Hold on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see your face. Much better.
All right,
now you Fudge. Great.
All right.
And we've got Heather Fraser of Castor Ventures, and Will Manidis, who is runs a Peter Thiel-backed firm. So why don't you guys get started? And Bill, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, thanks. Welcome everybody to the Healthcare Opportunities panel. Again, my name is Bill Galley. I'll be moderating it. Heather Fraser and Will Manidis will be talking about what they're doing. Just a little quick bios on each of them. Heather wears several hats. She is the founding and managing director at Fraser Consulting, focused on strategies, portfolio operational advisory services. Will is the founder and CEO of Cascade Bio, which is an enterprise software company building machines that read, write, and comprehend scientific literature. I've asked Will and Heather to relate what they're doing with their specific companies and advisory firms with regard to key themes and trends that healthcare analysts, advisors, and thought leaders think are going to be the dominant trends in the coming period ahead. One would be transforming healthcare with remote care. Another would be predictive, preventive, personalized healthcare. A third would be the commercialization of health. The fourth would be breakthrough medical innovations. The fifth would be health data and collaboration. And the fifth would be health equity. And the players would be the payees, the providers, the pharma companies, the tech companies, and the patient and their advocates. So without much further ado, Heather, why don't you go first and tell the audience what you're doing with your companies and at Castor Ventures, which invests in MIT lead companies.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, so I do wear multiple hats. With Castor Ventures, I am a fellow there. And Castor Ventures is an industry, geography, series agnostic company, investment company. We focus on MIT-led investments, and we are only open to MIT alum. We're not affiliated with MIT though. We just like to partner with the people who went to the school. It's part of Alumni Venture Group, which has funds across many other different schools such as Harvard, et cetera. I'm also a founder of a synthetic biology. We are pre-seed stage. We're looking to innovate iron deficiency and anemia therapies, which are severely lacking right now. There's not a great therapy beyond oral and IV iron. And then thirdly, I do have a consulting business, which is how I pay the bills. So those are all the hats that I'm wearing. And, so I think that at Castor, one of the things that's been super, interesting just in terms of the healthcare companies that we have invested in is just the amount of variety of different innovative solutions that have been out there. In terms of, I think the first topic, Bill, you wanted us to talk about was the remote care. Is that the first one?
Yes, if you want to elaborate on that, Heather, that would be great.
Yeah, great. So we have, you know, for example, one of the companies that we've invested in is called Rapid SOS, for example. And so that allows a direct link from, you know, your connected device, your smartphone, your wearable, et cetera, to 911 and first responders. You know, so that's one of the companies that we've invested in. We've also looked at, you know, Kinza, which is a company that has a map of a real-time map of human health, right? So something that, you know, is basically aggregating all these different types of data. So I wanted to bring those two up as examples of just really interesting, you know, kind of remote, you know, sort of public health, you know, type companies. But then also there's just the companies who are doing the telehealth delivery, certainly a lot of mental health. So when you think about Achilli as one example of a digital health therapeutic company, where, you know, just very innovative in terms of the type of therapy that they're delivering through a video game application, in addition to just having, so that's completely remote. You don't have to, you know, go see a doctor at all. You just get a prescription and you play a video game, and it's to treat ADHD. So that's, you know, just, I think, truly remarkable, and, you know, changing how we interact with our physicians, how our kids interact with physicians, you know, and how we actually can call, you know, help in the example of Rapid SOS. So there's just so many different types of ways that we're bringing, you know, care to patients, as opposed to having them come to the office.
Heather, can you tell the audience how you're capitalizing on some of these trends that I referenced a couple of minutes ago for the audience, with your different services and with Castor, what Castor's doing, and how they're leveraging their portfolios with these?
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned, so Castor is very agnostic. We don't have a thesis around healthcare per se, but I definitely have, you know, we're follow-on investors to major other investors. But, you know, I have certainly seen in my consulting work this major uptick, and Will and I were talking about this as well, you know, real world evidence and just those trends of, you know, trying to pull together all of the different data sources, understanding what's happening outside of a clinical trial setting, understanding how to use that data for new indications potentially. You really have seen an uptick in different major companies being able to leverage real world data to either find or support approvals with using real world data. And so when you have these pools of data, you know, this is where companies like where Cascade Bio comes in, where you need to have, you know, very significant, you know, machine learning, AI algorithms to just crunch through all of that data and make sense out of it. And so, you know, for different clients that I've worked for recently, you know, major pharma companies, they're very interested in predicting diseases. And so, you know, if you look through real world evidence, can you predict who's going to transition into a disease state from just having, you know, risk factors or, you know, initial symptoms? Then you have prevention. So, I mean, I think even the Thermalin example could be very, you know, interesting if you thought about maybe a type 2 diabetic, you know, and thinking about how you might manage that patient a little bit differently if you knew, you know, their insulin levels, you know, and how to treat them and how to personalize that therapy. You know, you can just see that data coming in, you know, just providing so much information that wasn't available before. You're just relying on people's memories, et cetera. And then, as Will and I were talking about the personalization, you know, of data, where of care, where you're actually able to say, you know, again, using even the Thermalin example of, you know, this is how much insulin you specifically need at the specific time. So it's the right medicine for the right patient at the right dose. The other thing that we're seeing in terms of big data and, you know, the technology is being able to make clinical trials go faster. speed up drug development, find targets more quickly, you know, understand, you know, everything, you know, a lot better in terms of, you know, how to run the models, to do the target identifications that I already mentioned. So it's just, there's this whole, you know, new era that it's being ushered in through data, whether it's through, you know, finding, diagnosing patients, treating them, and then just even, you know, another area that I didn't mention would be just long-term follow-up of patients post, you know, even clinical trials. That could be a very interesting area as well. So Will, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, since that's your main business area.
Yeah,
I mean,
if I can interrupt, why don't you explain what you've been doing at Cascade Bio and how Cascade is scaling up, you know, with AI and digital technologies. Of course, that's another big emerging trend out there. In fact, McKinsey company, one of the premier consulting firms, has viewed that as a dominant trend for entrepreneurs and disruptors. So without, again, further ado, Will, I'll let you take the floor.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Heather, you touched on all of the major themes I'll hit, so you made my job easy. But at Cascade, essentially, we're building software infrastructure that improves the accuracy and speed of both biomedical research and also clinical care. So for us, we're embedded in some of the world's best research and development organizations and healthcare centers, helping the incredibly smart people that do amazing work there every day to do more work or do more accurate work. Most often, customers are buying us to help accelerate their existing workflows or to make sense of the data they have in place, or to lower things like tail risk of future development programs. I mean, my background is personally in precision medicine for oncology, so I spent kind of the last 5 years of my life answering the questions of how do we make all of this data useful in a cancer context. And I think if we really want to talk about kind of the next 5 years of healthcare, an important theme there is precision medicine moving from just, I'm a cancer patient, I get sequenced, I get a better therapy, to I'm a patient holistically across diseases that is now going to have a dramatically more informed decision based on ML or AI, et cetera. Specifically, I think that is going to revolutionize everything from like early stage drug R&D, target identification, as Heather mentioned, all the way up to things like novel delivery at point of care. Like it's pretty obvious the patient-physician relationship will look fundamentally different in the next 2 years than it will for kind of all of our lives. So that's a big theme for us. We're really focused on scaling up that human capital that is already in the field to make sure we can increase pace of progress.
Looking ahead, Will, what do you see your company doing within the scope of the ecosystem to scale up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, we win when our customers are able to take more shots on goal. So many pharma companies today are rate limited by just the work of human analysts trotting through information, trying to make sense of it. Like Flatiron Health, an amazing company that recently sold for $2.6 billion to Roche, had 1,800 data labelers at time of acquisition. Our goal is to make sure that work is unnecessary, so you could build a company like Flatiron with a handful of dozen people. The hope is to lower the bar so you can make sense of healthcare data where it already lives. That could mean bringing new therapeutics to market faster. That could mean enrolling clinical trials faster. Or that could mean things like powering up these new data-rich clinical applications.
All right, Heather, turning to you for a minute. You, as I mentioned earlier to the audience, you wear several hats. And one is you're the co-founder and CEO of Synthera Health, you know, whose mission is to develop, you know, novel treatments for iron deficiency anemia, leveraging synthetic biology. Can you explain how you see this evolving when it comes to the major trends that we outlined to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, synthetic biology is such a fun and amazing space. am, just learning a tremendous amount. I think we all are, in terms of how to, use microbes, to help us make products. And, specifically, here in the Boston area, there's a big sort of famous company, famous around here at least, Ginkgo Bioworks. And there's a number of other ones that are popping up that are enabling, basically, at scale production of bioengineered therapeutics, food products, flavorings, fragrances. Bacteria and yeast are just these amazing organisms, and so we're leveraging gene editing to just really develop things at scale. So insulin, for example, is produced through synthetic biology. It was one of the first ones that leveraged this technology. So at Synthera Health, what we're trying to do is use this new technology to address a problem that just hasn't been addressed in a way that is satisfactory to patients. And so we're also applying for SBIR grants. So we're in the very early stages, and I think just based on some of the initial conversations that we've been having with the NIH, there's just a lot of excitement on their side as well from a synthetic biology, bioengineering, to learn more about how therapies produced in this way can just be done at scale rapidly. It's a very new field.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to encourage the audience to interrupt and ask questions if they want before we get to the formal Q&A session. Will, turning to you, what specific identifiable investor interests have you seen so far, with your business model?
Yeah, we're in a pretty wonderful position in that we sit at the intersection of kind of pure enterprise software and biotech. So we've been lucky to see kind of large investor interest in both of those communities. I would say we got lucky in that traditional tech investors tend not to be afraid of us because we aren't that wonkish. We tend to fit the playbooks that kind of classical enterprise software works. So for example, our seed was led by Section 32, a very classic biotech fund, but our most recent round of financing was led by Lockheed Groom Fund, which is a very, very traditional tech firm. So we've been lucky to straddle both of those worlds. We've also been lucky with a handful of grants, like from the Teal Foundation and others, to support this work. But it's definitely an exciting place to pull funding these days.
All right. Heather, on your end, the investors who are interested in healthcare at Castor, specifically, what kind of investments have you seen there in your capacity as a fellow and being a member of the team there?
Yeah, so one of the, probably because of COVID, the more interesting companies that we've invested in is called E25 Bio. And I think this represents a larger trend in terms of a little bit different space from therapeutics, but the diagnostic space, where you're able to take a finger prick of blood and do testing, for all sorts of diseases in minutes. And so this brings the diagnostic test closer to the patients. So that's something that our fund has invested in. I was not involved in that particular deal, but it's just, this is the hard tech, medical device world where you're just enabling, comes to the point before where you're bringing the care, to the patient, to the physician's office, in a much more scalable way, with a lot less invasive and intrusive burden on the patient when you just have a finger prick of blood. Interestingly to me, a couple companies I've come across recently, both in my consulting capacity and at Castor, are related to diseases of aging and changing cells, and especially as I get older, I am becoming even more interested in these companies. Really addressing cell senescence. So one of the companies that we've invested in is called Unity Biotechnology, and that's one of their particular areas. It's a small molecule company. And then another company that came out of Harvard is using gene therapy to change protein expression for particular genes, and they were able to cure a lot of mice of obesity and type 2 diabetes all at once. And so their mouse data looks amazing, but I do think that that's a new area, especially with the boomers and the older generation, where there might be even more investment in terms of just looking at diseases of just aging and applying new therapies, potentially like gene therapy to address the sort of cell degradation, I guess, as we get older. So I'm pretty excited about those two things.
All right, at this point, I'd like to stop because time is ticking and ask the audience to respond to our panelists with any questions they have. So I'll open the floor to any questions.
I have a question. So, Will, can you talk a little bit more about your venture and about your, capital needs? Now, I thought that, Teal typically invests in big chunks, and maybe you can talk a little bit about, what kind of first round you had. I think you said you're looking for a $20 million infusion at this point in time.
Yeah, we'll see on kind of additional fundraising soon. So we just closed the end of our seed last week. That was a $6 million single financing. We're not disclosing terms on that at the moment, but it was a mix of kind of Section 32, Lucky Groom Fund, all of these traditional investors to date. And then in the fall through Christmas, we'll think about raising a more significant $15 to $20 million Series A. I would expect about half of that to come from inside investors, but we'll see depending on market conditions.
So it was a safe note, or what was it exactly?
We did it priced. I'm not a huge fan of a convertible debt.
What'd you price it out at? You said 6 million?
6 million new cash. We aren't talking about pricing on the round quite yet.
When do you contemplate the Series A, Will? Do you have a
What's that?
It's Series A. What's your timeline?
Yeah, so we're relatively close to profitability, so we aren't particularly pressed by the market there. So we're thinking something before Christmas, but we'll see on timing depending on what customer development looks like. We have a couple large contracts that represent a pretty material inflection point for the company, so we're waiting to have data on those before moving forward.
Okay, any more questions from the audience? One observation on my end, what I'm seeing now is a shift or tilt toward more senior investments by companies, disruptors. So that's something for the audience to be aware of.
Can you explain senior?
Seniors who are retired, who are involved in entertainment pursuits or entrepreneurial pursuits. There's, I think Alan Patrikoff just started a fund for seniors. I think he raised something like $25 million. And I believe—
I'm sorry, for senior entrepreneurs or for seniors to invest in?
No, for senior entrepreneurs and
Wow.
and lifestyle. And there's also, Marty, lifestyle companies for seniors. It's a very interesting trend. And Alan jumped on this with one of his associates.
Well, I mean, if people are retiring at 60 and living another 40 years, that seems to be a pretty big segment to ignore.
Well, yeah, it's quite an optimistic longevity span you're giving people.
My mother just turned 98, I'm sorry.
Yeah, all right, well, congratulations.
So I would say that I've got 10 relatives over 90.
All right, there's a question from Telly regarding, Telly, do you have? Just something flashed. Well, anyway, well, I guess that wraps it up then, Marty. I think I thank you for entertaining us and letting us dwell on healthcare opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, again, great job. Thanks so much. I think there's so much happening in healthcare right now. We did an event in Silicon Valley during Healthcare Week this past January, and we had about 25 VC funds presenting. About half of them were healthcare VC. So I think the space is exploding. There's lots of opportunities. People are not just looking at the AI aspects or oncology, but they're looking at longevity and all kinds of other aspects. So it's a really fascinating area right now. So our last panel is on conservation easement, and actually, I don't know